Hi, I'm Dan Komisky. Welcome to Connecting the Dots. Today we've got Derek Robertson with us to talk about his return to council. So Derek, first of all, welcome. Thanks very much for coming down. I appreciate you. We really want to hear what you have to say. Why'd you come back? Why are you coming back for this run?
So in 2018, when I left council, I joined the Lambton-Kent District School Board, and I currently serve as the vice chair of the school board. I really didn't have an intention on running for council again, but I've seen what's happened in this community over the course of these last 4 years. And we have good, well-meaning people sitting on council that are unfortunately, in my opinion, being led around by their nose. And by the administration. They do not have the proper governance skill and experience to manage this municipality properly and be transparent. And what I mean by that is decision-making needs to begin with the information being public. We can't make decisions without without our communities being involved, our neighborhoods of interest being involved, and understanding the impacts that we're going to have on any part of our community. And for that reason, I intend to come back to council and bring transparency and honest decision-making back to that table.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I for one think that that's brilliant and want that transparency, and I think there's a lot of other people that would agree with me.
It's going to happen.
Okay, so in March of 2022, council decided to move a temporary emergency homeless shelter to a former elementary school on Murray Street without consulting the residents of the neighborhood. No public meetings prior to council decision, no open houses, no surveys, no direct communication with the residents at all prior to approving staff recommendation. After 23 deputations asking for prior public consultation were ignored, the majority of council and the mayor agreed that they should do this. So phrasing that now, how would you ensure proper prior public consultation takes place?
Well, I would place my fist on the table, and I would defer the motion. And I would defer the motion until we have proper consultation. Now let's think about this. When we have planning applications in our municipality, we have full consultation with the communities of interest. When we have sidewalks going into various areas, we consult with the public. When we put bike lanes, we have open consultation. However, when we have an emergency homeless shelter going into one of the most historic residences or neighborhoods, residential areas, neighborhoods in our community, we don't consult with the public, and we claim it's an emergency. Now, I appreciate the term emergency as it relates to the people's plight, the homeless, and I like the term detached because there's so many reasons that people are homeless. But the emergency relates to their plight in this world. It doesn't relate to the actual events that took place. We knew, and by we I mean our municipality knew, that the contract was going to expire at the Travel Lodge. We knew that for a long time. And just because you were unable to find the appropriate place to establish the emergency shelter doesn't mean that you have an emergency. I work in public procurement. I'm not allowed to create my own emergencies. It's against the law. And so we can't claim that we have an emergency of our own making. That's not an emergency, that's an urgency.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. How would you ensure that staff recommendations are more detailed to allow public consultation opportunities? So obviously we're back to the transparency conversation.
It's simple. If the report comes to council and doesn't have the proper information, it gets set back. It's that simple. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. If I don't have the proper information that's in my public package, that means that the public doesn't have the information. And I will not make decisions that impact a neighborhood, our community at large, Ward 6, Chatham-Kent, if I don't have the appropriate information. We send it back to the staff to develop and bring us proper analysis. And other councillors are going to come here and say, well, I made a motion to defer, but I didn't get the votes. Sorry, that's not enough. Your job as a councillor is to be able to count to 10. And what I mean by that is get 10 votes to actually get the deferral passed properly so that we have proper governance at that table.
Thank you. Do you think CK Council requires more information from staff do you think that we need more information to make effective decisions?
I think we need open information. Here's the challenge. I think a lot of these decisions are already being made behind closed doors. I don't know what information they have. I don't know that because they're not sharing that. Of course we need more information. They may have all the information in their minds, but until that information is made public, you don't have any information.
Right.
And so the staff, do the staff need to provide more information? Maybe. I don't know. The council needs to ensure that that information gets on the public table.
Wonderful. Thank you. How would you handle conflict of interest in terms of so let's say you're facing a situation where you feel you might have a conflict of interest. Obviously there's internal things that you do there with council, but how do you handle that situation?
I follow the law. So if I have a true conflict of interest, I have a pecuniary interest whereby I'm going to monetarily or personally benefit, where my wife will personally benefit, my children, or my parents. Those are your conflicts. Those are detailed by law. I'm going to declare the conflict. And I'm not going to influence people behind the scenes related to that conflict. That's the law.
So you step back.
I have to.
Yeah.
I have to.
Okay.
I will say, though, in my 2 terms of council, I think I only had to declare a conflict twice. Once was because I was in a negotiation for a business that I didn't conclude, but that had interest with the municipality, and I never concluded that transaction. And one other time had to do, I believe, with the assignment of the animal shelter services to PAWR. My wife happened to be on the board.
So you've dealt with conflict of interest, and it's something. It's not illegal to have a conflict of interest. It's just illegal to proceed knowing that that's a conflict. Or I don't even know if illegal is the right word, but
well, it's illegal. In fact, if you proceed and you're truly conflicted, you're removed from council by law.
That's interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, number 2. In March of 2022, staff recommendations to expand facility programs at Hope Haven was put on hold to investigate a $1.2 million offer from a secret group of investors to move forward on a shelter away from downtown. The new staff recommendation with the new investor option was presented as a done deal to the Chatham Daily News on Friday, March 18th, 2022, and passed by council and the mayor on Monday, March 21st, 2022. Easy question. Would you have voted for a homeless shelter in a residential neighborhood? Actually, maybe that's not, I shouldn't say that. That's a question I'm going to just put out there. Would you have voted for that?
So first, would I have placed a homeless shelter in the deepest recesses of one of the most historic neighborhoods in Chatham? No, I would not have. Simple. Would I have ensured that we deal with the issue of homelessness? Absolutely, I would have. It's an important issue. I took the time. I took the time to go to Studio One for the. I mean, I don't call it a public consultation because it was a farce, but I went there because I was interested in the issue that day. But most importantly, you put a homeless shelter where you have services, and the other support services, right, where you're dealing with addiction, where you have ability to deal with mental health issues, where you have public lighting, policing in the core, safety. These are the issues that this neighborhood wanted to talk about in consultation before they passed the motion. That was information that the council needed to have so that they were properly addressing the issues of this community. And by community, I mean Chatham. I don't mean just this historic downtown neighborhood, although this is it deeply impacts this area. But you have to place a homeless shelter in an area where you have support services. And then the question is, do we have appropriate support services? And thanks to our provincial government over the course of the past 2 decades, no, we don't. Because we continue to download these services onto the municipality that can ill afford to pave their own streets. So it's a global issue. It needs to be dealt with at a federal and provincial level, and the municipalities need to have a voice. In particular, those municipalities that have an offset position pro-rationally between population and detachedness or homelessness. It's an important issue. Within my first month of being on council, I've already said this, but within my first month of being on council, I will bring a motion that implores the provincial government and the federal government to work with communities, municipalities like Chatham-Kent, but not exclusive to Chatham-Kent, to help to develop a strategy that will address the needs of detachedness and homelessness in our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Doug, it's not easy.
You've answered a lot of questions, so I'm just skipping down
Sure.
a little. So we talked about support. What kind of support would we need in neighborhoods? In a neighborhood, sorry, in a place where there's going to be a homeless shelter, what kind of support do you need?
You don't need to put a homeless shelter in a neighborhood.
Right.
Period.
Right.
So I appreciate this question, but in fairness, and I'm not being critical, I'm just saying that the question's backwards. What support services do you need when you have a homeless shelter in the deepest recesses of a neighborhood? You need better decision making. You need to look at you need to relook at the decision. And we need to think about this current scenario as being a short-term solution, so that we can develop the proper long-term solution to this issue in our community. So I know the question is, what kind of services do you need? No, you need better decision making.
Okay, thank you.
I would just skip ahead.
Yeah.
It's kind of answered almost everything.
Yeah.
You know.
So we're going to go up to homelessness in Chatham-Kent. So homelessness is not unique to Chatham-Kent. Communities across the country are struggling with the problems that lead to homelessness and finding support services and resources necessary to help people in these situations. What do you think the leading causes of the homelessness in Chatham-Kent are?
So I think the leading causes are very similar in Chatham-Kent as they are across our province, across our country. It's we have addiction issues, there's mental health issues, there's sustainability of income and cost, but hopefully those issues with proper employment support can be more of the short-term nature. I think that the addiction and mental health are such a difficult thing to solve and to get into the deep recesses, because sometimes when people get down a path, they land in a place of, unfortunately, of no return. And in part, if we don't have the appropriate addiction services, mental health services available, and I'm not demeaning our mental health services. I mean, I think the CMHA work that we do in this community is absolutely stellar, but we need more resources. We need the province to support communities that have a disproportionate number of homelessness relative to their population.
How do we get that support from the province?
We need a loud voice. We need to implore the province. We need to speak to our members of parliament, our members of provincial parliament. We need to ensure that our mayor has a strong voice with the premier's office. And if they don't hear us, we need to say it louder. And we need to don't ever quit. Don't give up, and don't give up on the people that are facing these issues and in their lives, and this dilemma. And don't give up on our neighborhoods, and make smart, sound decisions in terms of how we look at this from a long-term solution, because it's never going to go away. But we need to ensure that we're supporting our people and that we use our loud, strong voice. We need counselors with experience. We need counselors that are not afraid to slam their fist on the table, and I don't mean that in a violent manner, but just to ensure that the people around that table are actually getting the issue. And the issue of transparency and honesty in decision making transcends the council. And when we have that type of cultural shift and change on our council will have a stronger voice with the province.
Thank you. You've answered all of my questions, because you've been very,
we
very
went quick.
We did go quick, yeah. So I do have one more though, Phil, because you're returning, and I'm excited to see new old blood back in, because I agree the experience is important.
I used to be young blood.
Me too. That's unfortunately happens to all of us. So this is just an opportunity for you to speak to what your plan is, and why people should vote for you, and what you're going to actually provide with the city and in your role.
Sure. So when I was on council before, I worked my ass off. I work for this community, every deep recess of this community, and I view Chatham-Kent as being the global entity of the municipality. I'm not a Ward 6 councillor. Yeah. So when I was first elected to council, I went in. They gave me my new cards, my business cards. Big deal for a 38-year-old at the time, I suppose. And on the card it said Derek Robertson, councillor, Ward 6. And so I gave them the cards and I said throw them out, and I want new cards. Say Derek Robertson, councillor. We need to be thinking about this community globally at all times. And I took that kind of approach with everything I did on council. Sometimes to my detriment. I mean, I guess, there are times where people don't always like that loud, snarky voice. But I worked hard. And when I was on council, I rewrote the local home improvement policy as it related to sidewalks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's extremely important when it comes to active communities and lifestyle. I led the charge for the funding from council for the hospice, and I believe at the time that it was so unfortunate that Chatham-Kent did not have a hospice when we're an hour away from any other significant population, London to the east and Windsor to the west. And now we have one of the finest facilities in all of Ontario. I'm so proud of that. I led the charge to establish the funding for the new animal shelter. And if people remember our old animal shelter, it was disgusting. It was nauseating, both for the animals and the staff. Now we have the crown jewel in Ontario for an animal shelter, managed by PAWR, which is a fantastic organization. It's brought real pride back to that portion of our that service. I worked hard, but I worked hard with a transparent voice. When I made decisions at that council table, I implored council to have all of the proper information, and I'll do the same again if you send me back.
Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.